Resume recording. There we go. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, video and audio also. Additionally, all chat conversations will be recorded and preserved for public record. As we adjust to online meetings, we want to share the following logistical information. All attendees are muted and must be unmuted in order to be heard. For those participating via computer, the raise hand tool is the icon at the bottom of the screen, or can be found by clicking the participants box or the chat box. For those participants via phone, dial *9. The meeting host will see a list of everyone who wants to speak and will unmute and call on those individuals one at a time. Attendees will remain muted until specific moments on the agenda when public comment is accepted. Members of the public who wish to give public comment will be unmuted to speak one at a time. To indicate that you want to speak, use the Zoom raise hand tool when the meeting gets to the public comment agenda item. Prior to speaking, all public comment speakers are requested to please state your name and residence or affiliation for the record.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll move on to agenda item 2. Any revisions to the meeting at this point? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 3, introductions and public comments. Do we need any introductions, people here, or is there any public comment? Anybody else joining us from the public who would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, I will move to agenda item 4 to approve the minutes of the February 6th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Gotta get to the microphone.
So moved from Keith.
Keith moves. Have a second? I need a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Any changes to it? Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. I will take that it passes. Move on to agenda item 5, which is.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? Who was the second on that?
Jesse.
Jesse.
Thank you.
On item 5, old business, we have none, but also it says here, there we go. We'll move on to, is there any other old business anybody else would like to add? At the point that this was done, there wasn't. Is there any old business out there? If I don't hear any, I'll move on to the next agenda item. Okay, I'll move on to agenda item 6. We'll move to new business, Part A, the budget amendment for FY 2019-20. Daniel.
All right, this budget resolution is just to bring in the finished and completed fund balance from the audit of fiscal year 18-19. So this just reconciles that entire audit and all the money that's left in that fund. I identified all the projects that are going forward and all the funds, and we have about $5,627 coming into the next fiscal year.
Thank you. Any comment on this agenda item, Part A? Hearing no comment, is there any public, I'll make sure I always say this, public comment since it is a public meeting. If there's any public has joined us. Okay, hear none. Do I have a motion to accept the budget amendment for FY 2019-2020?
Move approval, Northy.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, I have approval by Pat, second by Jesse. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Kayleen, Jim has raised his hand. I don't know if you want to address that.
Okay.
Jim Moore, go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you. Do you have your microphone on?
I don't hear him from my end. Kayleen, do you?
No, I don't. Jim, I'm not showing that you have a microphone.
Jim, if you can, go ahead and use the text box or the chat box, and we'll make sure to keep an eye on it.
Kayleen or Jesse, any comment on the chat box yet?
Nope.
None.
Okay. At this time, I'll just call it, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, that portion A passes. Move on to 6B, final adoption of budget resolution FY 2021. Daniel.
All right, this is our final adopted budget for the fiscal year 2021. All we did was we brought in that fund balance from after the audit and brought in $5,627. We also identified in our agency balance a couple of projects that had come in under budget or were withdrawn, and that totaled $118,219. So we're bringing those forward, all that $123,846 into this fiscal year's budget. A portion of that money is going to go into our reserve, and the other portion is going to fully fund the Sewell's Point project that was asked for by council. And that's it. Nothing else changed from the tentative budget.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on Part B or the final adoption of budget resolution? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept the final budget?
Move Northy.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Seconded Keith Winston.
Second by Keith. Thank you, Keith. Any further comment on it? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you. Move on to Part C of 6, FY 21-22, request for proposal, categories and priorities. Dr. D.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll be quick on this because this is the beginning of really the 2021-22 RFP process. You can see in your package kind of the categories and priorities that we're proposing. We are going to kind of move this through the management conference this week, so you're the first to see these. You can see some minor adjustments, but very similar to what we've done this past year. We will then kind of go through next week's advisory meetings, go to council, and what we'd like to do with this RFP process is try to get this going early if we can, so our responders have more time to respond to the RFPs. So in the past, we've been pushed right up against the holidays. So the goal here is to come into August we have to make any adjustments, we've got time to make adjustments based on your feedback today, feedback next week, and council's direction. In August, we'll lock down the details on these proposals, and then we'll move forward accordingly. And so right now, the motion that we're requesting is, recommend to the council to accept and authorize staff to develop and issue those RFPs on or before November 1, knowing that if you have comments today and as we move the council a week from tomorrow, that there may be some adjustments made, and we'll keep you posted along the way.
Thank you, Dwayne. Any comments to Dwayne or questions concerning this? All floor is open. Okay, I hear none. So at this time, I would anybody give a motion to accept the requested action of 6C?
Cheryl's got her hand up.
Okay, I have a motion to accept. Do I have a second?
Oh, wait a second, Frank. I think she wanted to speak.
Okay,
Yeah, I just wondered, where is the RFP package? I didn't see it.
We have not, Kayleen, what did you put in the CAC package? We haven't done the detailed language on the RFP packages themselves. We're going to make some slight adjustments in process going into 21, 22. We may very well, of course, I'm hoping it's going to be more money, not less, but we may be adjusting budgets accordingly. So we haven't made a whole lot of effort to get the RFP language specifically, the ranking sheets, but we've had really good comments from the advisory committees on some adjustments to how we rank and review, including trying to normalize scores these next times around. So Kayleen, do you want to address that question related to the package?
Yeah, there's two sheets of paper, Cheryl. The first one is fiscal year 2021, 2022 request for proposals. It's a one-pager. It kind of outlines our thought process. The second page is FY 21, 22 RFP evaluation process improvements that were in your package that, again, outlines our thought process going forward.
Okay, and was that emailed to me?
Yes, ma'am, it was in the agenda packet that was emailed to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
okay, thank you. Any other comment? Any other hands up?
Nope.
Okay, did we get a second on this?
Second, Northy.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Frank, this is Dwayne. Just want to encourage everybody, if you hadn't taken a hard look at those 2 pages in your documentation, if you have suggestions or ideas, don't hesitate to let staff, any of us or all of us, know. We've always taken the approach that we could always do this better. And every year we've made adjustments, and every year the proposals get better and our review gets tighter. So do not hesitate as we move forward into those August meetings. If you've got ideas or suggestions, get them to us. We welcome the information.
Thank you, Dwayne. Any further comments? Hearing none, I'll call it. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing no opposition. 6C passes. Thank you. Moving on to 6D, COVID-19 response, bridge the gap with summer internship. Dwayne?
Thank you, Frank. I'm going to give you a little background on kind of how we got here. In response to COVID-19, Governor DeSantis reached out to the state agencies. And while we're not in that direct line, we pay attention to his directions to DEP and Fish and Wildlife and, all of the agencies. And he asked everybody to do 3 things in this crisis. Number 1 was to be nimble. Number 2 was, don't let bureaucracy get in the way of, moving us forward, both in response and as we move forward from here in recovery. And the 3rd one was think out of the box. So staff and I got together. We've been looking at our end of grant contract with EPA position. And some of you who are new to this may not be aware, but EPA, our grant contract runs in 5-year cycles. We have 2 open grants right now. The one that's about to close October 1, actually September 30th, any of the dollars in the U.S. Treasury, and dollars that we've appropriated going into that 5-year have to be spent. So with that said, we had some money that the council had authorized back in 2017-18 for internships. Those dollars had not been fully expended. And we started to think, wow, maybe this is a great opportunity to be part of this response, this COVID response. And so what staff has done, and you can see the package documents that were sent to you, we've identified 10 internships. These would be summer internships. These internships would be competitively chosen through a call, for interns. They are short duration with very specific deliverables, but the target audience is for those individuals who have expertise, experience, and are working on Indian River Lagoon issues, who may have been furloughed or just out of work, in a temporary situation, that we wanted to assist those folks who are struggling through this transition, put some work on the table, get some really important deliverables back. And so the motion we'd like you to consider is, recommending to the council that we move forward. So there would be 10 internships, 2,000 each. It's very important. These are not employees, they are contractors, and they would be individually contracted with a commitment to deliver that specific deliverable that you see in those 10 internships. And so with that, I'll take questions, but we felt like we wanted to be part of the solution and helping our partners. We know a lot of you out there, and some maybe on the phone, are not drawing paychecks. You've got either businesses or NGOs that aren't collecting revenues. You've been furloughed or you're taking reduced salaries. We wanted to help. So this is our attempt to do so. With monies already in the budget for internships, by the way, that need to be spent on or before that September 30 deadline. So we were going to move it into another category or just, move that 2018 vision. So I'll stop there and open for questions.
Thank you, Dwayne. At this time, any questions to Dwayne concerning 6D?
Dwayne, this is Graham Cox.
Hey, Graham.
Is there an application form of some kind on the web page, or the Lagoon web page?
There will be no application form on the web page until council directs us to do this. So
Okay.
if CAC recommends and we get similar recommendations in the management board and the STEM AC, we'll bring it to council a week from Friday. If council says, we love this idea, go with it, then staff's intent is to, as quick as we can, the following week sometime, get that call for internships on the street, with a reasonable time for response, so we can, get those internships, moving in a timely fashion. And you can kind of see the timeline that we're anticipating in your backup material. But yeah, that would not go, we wouldn't put that out till we get authorization to do so, Graham.
It makes sense to me, though. Thank you.
Is there any other comment to Dwayne on 6D? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to accept requested action for item 6D?
Move the motion to
Thank you,
accept
Pat.
agenda item 6D.
Do I have a second?
We have a raised hand, Paul Falfetta.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Hang on, I'm unmuting him. I'm trying. There you go, Paul.
Okay, second,
Thank you.
second on the,
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second at this time. Is there any other comment on this particular agenda item 6D to Dwayne or otherwise on this item? Hearing none, I'll call it to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That got everybody? Okay, opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We'll move on to agenda 6.
Hey, Frank, before you move on,
Yes,
I
Dwayne.
just want to thank you and everybody. We're hoping we can help some of our, team and family along the lagoon out with this. So I appreciate your support on this one.
No problem, buddy. Thank you for your work. I don't ever have to say that to you. You're amazing. Move on 6E if we're ready. Okay, thank you. This is in 2 parts. This is a discussion on 2020 small grant proposal scores, and there'll be 2 requested actions. Both of them need to be taken separately. So, okay.
Yep, I'm up on this one. So I want to let y'all know that we received, as we received 37 total proposals with an amount of $138,173 requested. There is a match total of $86,952, which brings the total grant proposals to $225,125. I do want to point out, hopefully you all got the email prior to this meeting this afternoon, that the scoring change has fluctuated. There's been a scoring change fluctuation. We found a scoring error. It didn't change which projects were selected, but it did change the order in which they were being presented. And I'm going to switch the slide so you can see how that changed a little bit. So this is the amended project list. I want to thank Mike Canine for pointing out the error so we could get this right, hopefully the first time. And we will move forward there now. I do want to remind you all, as we're going into discussions on this, this is open discussion for everybody on this call. However, if you have a conflict with any of these projects, keep that in mind as you're talking about it, and make sure that everybody else is aware of your affiliation with that project. So for instance, Brevard Zoo, Keith would say, Brevard Zoo, here's my opinion. Okay, everybody got it?
Okay.
So let the discussions begin.
Okay, let's start with just open discussion. Who would like any input from anybody on, here's the rankings.
This is Pat Worthy. I just guess I need some clarification. This is my first time with this. On the sheet that I'm looking at, and I've got it put up on my big computer at home as well, there's 8 projects that are highlighted in green. What does the green represent?
The green oops, sorry, didn't mean to be moving it like that. There's actually 7 projects that are highlighted in green.
I'm sorry, yeah, it was 8
Nope.
lines.
Nope, that's okay. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page. And those represent that if you go with the initial recommended funding right this minute, no more discussion, it is what it is. These are the ones that can be funded.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to be sure I understood it correctly.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kayleen, one quick thing here. 37, is that the most we've had?
I can't answer that. I'll have to defer. Kathy's shaking her head yes.
Great. Well, at least it shows we're getting out there to people, and people are realizing there's funds available and they're taking interest into the lagoon. So great job, guys, because 37 is a really good number. And hopefully that continues.
Keith, go ahead.
And one thing I like about what I see is hopefully we diversified it over not just one county, that we got all the counties on the lagoon involved in this as best we can. So.
And Frank, I want to point out that, you know, in these discussions, we can rescore these. You can change your scores. That's the reason why we sent out your score sheets. So if you change your mind, I'm ready to start entering in on the
Okay.
spreadsheet.
Kayleen, we've got somebody's hand raised here. Keith, I see it, or it's popped up. He has his hand raised.
I had 2 sort of general comments, and probably these could go at the end of the discussion or the beginning of the discussion. They're not about the scoring particularly. They were just about 2 trends I saw. The first is quite a few people apply for a day in the life of the lagoon, the very popular program. One of those proposals listed us. I'm just throwing that out. It's not a program we run. But it did strike me that if it's such a popular thing, there might be a side category for funding just for that, or some other mechanism. It seems to be a very popular program in schools. I'm only peripherally knowledgeable of it. The little I know, I have a high opinion of it, but I think there were like half a dozen. It's very much odd, to say this one gets it and this doesn't. I think something to think about for the future is, do you just put aside some funding for this very popular program? That was just one general thought for next year's process. And the other one is that lots of strong programs. Obviously, we're only funding a few of the top ones, which is great. But I did notice quite a few of these small grants made this sort of ill-informed connection between knowledge change and behavior change. So there were lots of people who said, we're going to teach them about the lagoon, therefore that it's just assumed they're going to change behavior. And we know those things are very, very poorly connected. So something else to think about for next year is, are there some workshops we offer the community on the basis of social marketing and behavior change? Because it's a whole discipline that's not based in knowledge change. So anyway, I just point those out as 2 interesting patterns I noted for future improvement of the process. Not a comment on any of the rankings, if that makes sense.
Keith, I kind of agree with you there too. It was pretty hard for me in a way. I was looking at a lot of these. I didn't vote on one of them because Surfside Elementary School is in my town and I sit on a few boards there. But what I looked at in some of my scoring, I'll just tell people, is I want to diversify the dollars over the counties. And when we had things that were so close to same, how could one be voted in and the other not, and virtually they're the same. So maybe it is good that we maybe look at some of this school education stuff in a different category or a different light next year. And I also think, somehow the education process of changing people's behavior, it should be the outcome of a lot of this. So for whatever it's worth.
Pat, you've got your hand up?
I do. And I just wanted to add my comments and thoughts, because that was one of the things that struck me, was that the Day in the Life program seems to be system-wide by a variety of different organizations. And it struck me that there ought to be maybe some way that whole program could be pulled together and marketed or sold, done something on a, separate and apart from this in the following year. It touched, when I looked at it, it seemed like it touched every county had some part of that program. And I don't know how consistent they are with each other, but that sounds to me like we ought to be pulling that piece of it out at some point and addressing that as a system-wide grant as opposed to these little individual ones, because I think it's probably a good program and we should take a serious look at it. But other than that, I'm okay with the rankings as they are.
So continuing on the A Day in the Life, is everybody familiar with what that program is?
Yes.
Okay.
Jesse, hang on a second. You are
Yeah.
getting a couple people shaking their heads no. So
Okay.
why don't you give a little synopsis?
Yeah, it's a program that's run by See a Difference and Orca that started up in New York. And pretty much what they're doing is they're having schools pair up with professionals in each one of the counties that encompass the Indian River Lagoon. And on one day between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., those schools meet up with the professionals and go out stain netting for biodiversity, looking at chemicals for different water quality, learning about tides, taking pictures, documenting. So we're getting one giant snapshot of what the IRL looks like on that one day. But there's no funding right now to be able to support that. So all of the schools have to put in funding individually to be able to get funding for subs or for buses or for materials, because there's nothing that's supporting that program right now. So it's kind of a bummer to see so many schools putting in for funding but ranking lower. And I'm kind of wondering why, since it's all the same program, why did only one rank within, being able to be accepted and the other ones didn't? So it is something that I'd like to discuss, the potential of raising their scores, since now we know it's all for the same program and it would really benefit those schools. And that's kind of the point of these small grants, right? It wasn't meant for, professionals or larger nonprofits to be able to go after that funding. It was supposed to be for schools and for homeowners associations. So if we're ranking these the same way that we rank professionals in the way that they write grants, I don't really think that's fair. So that's just my 2 cents.
Jess, let me ask you this, and everybody. It seems like we're hitting the kids at the age where they're going to be, we got to teach them. So should we pull this program in and look at it totally different? See if we could get a sponsor for this program, go to the school boards in each area and see if we can get this involved in as many schools as possible, and then have a budget for it and go out and market it and fund the schools that want to do it. Because basically they're all the same in reality.
Yeah.
And you look at the pricing, you had Surfside at $1,200, and you have another one, I think, $2,800 and so forth. So if we could, and to me, they're worthwhile projects. Maybe they're not in the right grouping to be in this.
Yeah, I think that's something that you'd have to talk to Missy Wise, the director of the program, about. I'm not really affiliated with A Day in the Life. I just am the one that has brought it to Volusia County, thanks to Missy, and has been working with the schools and the professionals. So I'm just a big proponent for the program, but I don't have any way to make stuff happen within it. You know what I mean?
I see we have 3 hands raised. Kayleen, you?
Yeah, Pat had hers up first.
Okay, I would agree with pulling it out and trying to get some sponsorships. And what immediately comes to mind are some of the power companies who like to put money into these kinds of programs. That gives them good visibility. So I think that's a conversation that we should have. But for me, when I scored them, it was when I looked at the actual paperwork, they looked different on some of them, and so I think I scored most of them with a 4 because I really like this program, but there was differences in the cost and what they were asking, and that concerned me a little bit, the inconsistency on that. So I don't know for this year, because I'm new to this, what you can do, but certainly the program deserves to have overall attention to it, and I do think we can probably get sponsorships for it.
Yeah, I think it just depends on how much the schools charge for subs and for buses, because I believe that Missy tries to get as much as she can for materials paid through different grants, but it's up to the schools to be able to find funding to get the kids out there. So some school districts that can't afford to do it, that's why they're looking for these grants to be able to. So I'm sure those costs differ depending on the school system.
Okay. Next we have Dwayne, then Keith, then Mike Canine.
I'm going to defer until we hear from Keith and Mike, because I'm going to make a suggestion and then kind of toss it over to our Chief Communication Director, Kathy, to see what she thinks.
Keith, you're up.
I lowered my hand because the
Oh.
previous speaker covered my points.
Okay, so Mike Canine, you're up.
Where's my hand raised thing at?
It's me, just wave at the screen.
Yeah, I called Kathy on this one, like you guys are saying, and you know, it's a big program. A lot of people are wanting it, and it's totally beneficial. So I'm all with the fact that this probably needs some kind of additional funding, because it's hard to pick out of all these guys when they're doing the same program. You're favoritising them based on what their guidelines are and stuff, when you know they should be equally funded, I feel. But yeah, I'm 100% for this thing.
Dr. Graham, do you want to voice yours, or you want me to read your
Sure.
comment?
No, I had, if you remember, Daniel, I had this discussion with you several weeks ago, and you said at the time you were rethinking or maybe thinking about a way to deal with this one. I just totaled up the amount to the.
Yeah, we all talked about it and wanted to see what happened with this first before we decided if it would be anything we could bring into the budget.
Yeah, I totaled up all of the day in the life projects in the 37, and it came to 14, just a few dollars short of $14,000. I know that there are other schools that didn't apply, so it would probably not be fair to fund them as one lump sum without inviting others to be part. But if there's a way we could find a bigger sponsor in line with the discussion we just had, maybe not this year, but for next year, and really sell this as I think it's a really worthwhile education project. And I think if it's going, as it goes lagoon wide, we should be able to get some real interest from sponsors for this one.
Okay, Adam? Oh, hang on, let me unmute you. Ryan, there you go.
Hi, everyone. I have a program that I work with a school in Martin County which is an at-risk program that we bring kids in who are troubled, who are in the at-risk program, out to the river to teach them to windsurf. And I agree that the biggest problem that we run into is basically busing the kids out and the cost that tie up the teacher and the moving the kids back and forth. Would that be something that could be looked at in the future for this type of funding?
And that leaves it up to you, Dwayne. You're next.
I did want to mention something real quick, if that's okay.
Yep.
So you guys can see this on the spreadsheet right now, but interestingly enough, Orca, the parent company or whatever of this program, ranked 13th for the Day in the Life program. So they aren't even getting funding for the supplies, but some of the schools are getting funding for subs. So I just want to kind of like put that out there that for some reason we ranked that low enough that they're not even going to get funding for this program this year. So I'd like to revisit that scoring since we're having a large discussion on ADL and how important it is, and possibly think about funding that program so that at the very least she can get the supplies out to those schools that they need.
Kayleen, am I up?
You are up, I believe.
Okay, I just want to throw this out as a suggestion. I'm going to kind of defer to Dan on the kind of the fiduciary side of things, and then to Kathy as the chief communication officer. But you have a lot of flexibility as the CAC, and I think your discussions are all really, really good. And there are some other programs, and I don't want to put Mike on the spot, but if you look at Anglers for Conservation and that lagoon-wide delivery, and then you look at the Day in the Life as a lagoon-wide delivery, and look at those in a different context than small grants. Small grants are typically projects. These are programs and not projects. So it is not only within your, what we want you guys to be thinking about and doing in the CAC, but I think it's within, your vision for this program to maybe explore this more. I do think, even though we've got, our final budget for 2021 kind of setting next week, I'm 100% sure we're going to be amending budgets in August. Hopefully not because there's less money, maybe because there's a little more. I'm being almost stupidly optimistic with COVID. But, I think you have the opportunity, if you wanted to identify and you have consensus, to move a number of these projects forward to recommend. If you want to hold some of them back, to have this larger discussion about programmatic funding, we may need to convene another meeting of you all specifically on the record to do that. But Dan and Kathy, I'm going to defer to you and to the CAC on this, but I do think this is a really good conversation, as it relates to, small grants. We always looked at that as projects, just a project. Somebody has something they want to do, they need a little bit of money for to make it happen. And this discussion's more about lagoon-wide programmatic delivery. And it may be we're going to, as we move forward, address those as two separate, CAC RFP approaches. But Kathy, what's your thoughts?
Well, first, let me agree with that. And also reiterate that you guys, as the CAC, are going to tell us what this program looks like. So these rankings that we're looking at today fell under the criteria that you set last year. You have the opportunity today to re-rank projects and to produce a final projects list, and we'll do that today. And I will tell you, we had internal discussions after Mike called and Graham called, and we had several emails about this saying, why can't we just make this a project? And it'll be one thing. And we had considered just sponsoring See a Difference as just a program sponsorship, so we wouldn't have to worry about parsing the money or doing it per school, just providing a sponsorship that's a lump sum that they could deal with and then parse out as it needs to be. However, and Dan can speak to this too, our public process of procurement is pretty rigorous. And if we have an RFP process and we don't follow it, then that opens us up to being, what's the term, Dwayne, arbitrary and capricious?
Capricious.
And in our decisions. And that is a legal pitfall. So again, the list is in flux. It's entirely up to you how you want to rank the projects and where they fall out. And then later in the discussion, and this is intended to be part of today's discussion, when we were going over the list and how the rankings fell out, we had questions ourselves about, are we really hitting the groups that we want to hit? Should universities, for example, be able to apply for a small grant? Should big organizations be able to apply? If the intent of the program, as Jesse was saying, is to hit these small schools, nonprofits that, won't be doing a program any other way unless they get these small grants, are we doing what we want to be doing with this program? And that's something that we need you all to weigh in on, because we could decide as staff, but we don't run the program. You all do. So we need you to tell us how this should go.
And I wanted to, Kathy, this is Keith. I think you're asking the right questions because we followed this process. I don't see anything wrong with the results of this process. We don't want to capriciously change it, but recognizing the holes in the process for next year. And to answer, Jesse, I'm trying to remember, there were so many of these. I think Surfside did really well because they had a big match and they wrote it was the quality of the application, right? That's what we compared. But I really do like what you said, Kathy, and I can almost see saying, if this is really for small groups, maybe it's for like groups that don't have any paid professional environmental leaders on it. So a schools qualify, or a not-for-profit that's just all volunteers.
Or small staffs under 10 or something.
Small staffs, or really small staffs. I think when I look at these, I do hate messing with rankings, because then sometimes the people later hear, well, you were the last one in, and somebody was really, promoted some other one, and you got knocked out because of this. So I like to see the processes run through, but I do like to see the processes change. And if we're noting that these bigger groups are taking the little pots of money, then it can change for next year. Maybe there's a third in other categories. So anyway, I think you're on the right trail.
Keith, I like what you just said there about, the process, or really our idea what is small grants? Maybe we need to, now that we got 37 this year, which is the best we've done, what did we get? What didn't we like? Or what can we make it better? Who are we trying to hit in this? And take that, because we have time now, and see what would be small grants, what could be into a project that we could just find in the budget to sponsor and not be really in the small grants. And I don't want to sound crazy off the wall, but some of my rankings on a few things was, man, that organization is raising a lot of money on their own. And not that it's not a good organization, but you had other things that were struggling and help kids and so forth that didn't have the power of a bigger organization. So, what is the dollar for? Is it strictly for, water quality, something that does to clean the lagoon? Is it more, do we want more small grants to be education based? So that's where I struggled with some of the rankings of certain things, because maybe in my knowledge, I knew somebody was getting a ton of money somewhere else and other people weren't getting any. So I don't know. So that's my piece.
Mike? Hang on, I'm trying to get you unmuted. There you go.
Gotcha. Yeah, again, devil's advocate thing. As far as a program goes, I think about A Day in the Life is a program very similar to Hook Kids on Fishing is a program of Anglers for Conservation. And I wouldn't typically write a grant for something that is program related. With that being said, it's very hard if you're a small organization, devil's advocate again, filling out an application for a grant, that you're up against some of these other heavy hitters that you don't really stand a chance in, so that I think there could be possibly some divisions of this funding to where if you're education based, you file for education based grants or something. I think it's so across the board that we look at numbers 37 versus 1, they don't really compare to each other, but they're all fighting for the same dollar, if that makes sense.
Pat? Hang on, I'm still unmuting you. It's like a delay. I'm trying. Okay, no, there you go. Got you now.
Okay. I think this is some really good and rich conversation. However, I hope we're not heading towards a place where we're going to change the process in midstream. I don't think that's fair to all of the other ones who have applied. I would ask the staff, is there some way for us to recommend, and I don't know what the dollars are, but is there some way for us to recommend to the council that they take a look at funding this? If I don't know if there's, yeah, I don't know what the total amount was. I never added that up as far as all those day in the life programs of the Lagoon. But I don't think at this point that we can fairly change the way we're reviewing. Not change the way we're reviewing, but change the process. I know we can rank, but my ranks were I already ranked them all 4s, and so obviously they weren't ranked high by some others because there's only one of them that made it to the top. So I just want to see us be fair to the process, as well as if there is a way for us to recommend to the council that they take a look at this and maybe with some staff direction do something to support the program in total. And I don't know what those dollars are.
Pat, this is Graham Cox. The total dollars for all of them for 5 projects came to $13,982.
Okay. That's more though than what we're allocating, correct?
Yeah, that's all of the day in the life projects. There's 5 of them.
Yeah.
And that was the total, just a few dollars short of 14,000 bucks. But at the same time, there are other people who did not apply who are doing the same day in the life program. So
That's true.
so it
Yeah.
could be considered a little unfair to those folks.
Yeah, I hear you.
Greg Braun has his hand raised, Kayleen.
Us?
He's in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. It didn't notify me. There you go, Greg. Go ahead.
Can you guys hear him? I can't hear him.
I can't hear him.
Oh, that way a minute. No, I can't hear him either. Greg, we can't hear you.
Maybe type your comment in the chat box and we'll read it for everybody.
Or get closer to the microphone.
Okay, is that any better?
No. See if the volume on your computer is turned down.
Okay, is that any better?
Slightly.
Yeah, we can barely hear you.
Well, I had a challenge with the
Yeah.
rank of the day in the life also. I did not rank them all evenly because the different entities were asking for different sums of money. So I don't think we're changing the process at all, because the process was set up for us to be able to have this discussion before a final ranking goes out. So I think it would be appropriate for us to recommend that the council find some other funding process so that each of the day in the life applicants can be getting a proportional amount of however much we're able to designate. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Dwayne?
I'm going to jump in here and just make a suggestion. And this is a rich conversation, and I'm glad you're heading in the direction you are. You know, Kathy and I and Kayleen, we've had this discussion, you know, over the last couple of weeks. I'm going to just make a recommendation for your consideration. Ultimately, this is your decision, but we had a process. You followed the process, and at least several of you, I think, have reiterated that, you know, you were judging these proposals on their individual merit without, and I think you did this appropriately, trying to combine them under day in the life. You know, the day in the life is the program, but you are judging each of these applicants as an individual project. And, you know, Greg just mentioned that, you know, in some cases it was amount of money. It could have been how well the proposal was written. So I want to suggest this, that if you stay with your process, you recommend moving forward with those recommended projects that are in the green, that were the highest rank, then that solidifies that funding amount based on the money that was allocated for that purpose in the budget. Then your directive can be both to staff and to the other advisory councils, management board, because we'll talk about this, especially when we get to council, that you'd like to, you know, expand the CAC delivery to separate small projects and begin to consider some of these programmatic deliveries, and that we would bring this back to you all in that August meeting, kind of with some staff and budgetary recommendations, kind of have a really robust discussion about what you would like this to look like. And I don't want to be negative, but the reality I'm facing, and Dan and my team are facing right now, is that we are uncertain about what fiscal year 2020, 2021 is going to look like as it relates to even actually any of those new revenues for the fiscal year. So we're kind of, you know, the monies that we've got in place that are moving forward, you know, we're good with. From, you know, starting October 1 and moving on, we're in uncharted territory, and we're probably not going to have a clear idea of what that fiscal reality looks like. I hope we have it by August, but this would give you all time to kind of think about how you would like to see this change and expand. And I know Kathy and I, from the very beginning, when we, you know, we would like to see a robust citizen education program. You know, right now you've got small grants. This could expand, you know, both in budget and programmatic oversight for you all, you know, to something more. But I think you're going to need some time to have that discussion about what that looks like. And you're not going to be able to resolve that today, you know, in advance of, you know, the council meeting next Friday. So my recommendation is, you know, let's follow through with this with you all. Staff will take your comments and directions and anything else you want to, you know, guide us with today. If you go ahead and move these forward, at least they will become part of that kind of recommendation to move forward to contract. And then we'll see where we stand kind of in that financial world as we're moving forward. Dan, you have anything you want to add on the financial side of that?
The only thing I would say is that, you know, per our operating procedures, you know, for procurement, you know, we can, if we were to have this as like a programmatic type of thing where, you know, you take that 14,000, we were talking about how we would do this because we, you know, our sponsorships typically are only 2,500 that we're allowed to give out. So anything above that kind of has to go through council. So if we were to, you know, take 14,000, you know, do we give that to each individual person applied, or do we give it to the the organization and have them pay out the contractors for their buses and the schools? That would have to go through council because that's above our threshold for sponsorship.
And what I was thinking, Dan, you're in the same lines as I, that should the CAC want to do that kind of expansion, then what we would do is split the small grants RFP, narrow down the specificity of what a small grant is, and then maybe open up to, I'm going to just say this as an example because you all would have to decide, you know, it could be lagoon-wide education programs with certain kind of criteria where in this case, should this be one that you would choose through a competitive RFP, there would be a certain amount of money under contract to day in the life to do a certain number of deliverables, which would be those projects within the counties, you know, with the idea that the available dollars would kind of spread, you know, in the 5 counties, maybe not equitably or equally, but, you know, there'd have to be a competitive proposal because we'd be looking, we're over that $10,000 threshold. And we do need to be really careful with the use of public funds, make sure we're competitive and transparent. So with that said, I love where you guys are going and staff is willing to help you get there. But I don't think we're going to be able to get there today because of those procurement and process constraints.
Wayne, on what you just said, should this be a whole discussion in August or at our next meeting and relook at the small grants as a whole from this standpoint? We've been at it for a few years. It's growing. We got 37 this year. And if it's the most that we've gotten, next time we do, it might even get more. Do we need to take a step back, maybe reorganize this program a little differently? What's the mindset of where we want to go with it, dollar thresholds and so forth? Then this becomes easier to us. Because the things we're saying right now, we're not going to cure today. And I think it's part of the growing of this program. And, do we have the whole discussion at one of our meetings on how we want this small grants to look like? And I'll use that in quotes, small grants. It could be program, it could be whatever. What do we want it to look like 1 and 2 years from now?
Keith? I'm trying.
Sorry, that was me. I agree, Frank, with what you just said, and I agreed with what Dwayne said. I was ready to make a motion to accept the rankings, but I don't want to have further discussion. And let's re-deal with the process from what we've learned. But I'm not sure how many of us 15 start to monkey with the things is going to get us a better product this year. But I think we've learned enough now to know who we want to focus on. So I can hold off making that motion, Frank, or I can make a motion if we want to come to conclusion on this. I'm just available. But I think we've all identified we want to change the process in the future.
Okay. Keith, let me just hold off for 1 second, only from the fact that if there's anybody else who wants to put input in. If not, Keith, I'll accept your motion.
Yeah, this is Greg.
Greg,
I'd also like to put in some input on the coastal cleanup proposal, because that project, while overall I find it very helpful, throughout the not just the IRL but everywhere, I didn't want to rank it high for this one because that's a project that's going to move forward in Indian River County, whether we are supporting it or not. And so to me, it was less important for us to have it funded by us.
Okay. Thank you. Kayleen, is there anybody else with their hand up or wants to chime in on this the first part?
I'm seeing no. Mike, are you good? Because I got to see you flagging. Okay. Nope, I think you're good. You can go ahead and move forward now.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept a request for 6E1 to accept the scoring and ranking of this year's small grants program?
Moved.
Keith?
Yeah.
I have a motion by Keith. Do I have a second?
Second, Northy.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. I'll open up for last time for more comment. Anybody for any comment?
I see Mike with his hand raised.
Oh, sorry, Mike, hang on. I'm getting to you.
I got it.
Oh,
For
there we
thought.
go. We're canceling
Food
each
for-
other out. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Food for thought. What I'm thinking in the future, you know, if we do divide this thing, as an educator myself, I would feel much easier going against other educators in a grant writing process versus hard in-ground projects. So that's just my thoughts as an educator.
Okay. Thank you. Any further comment? Can you see any more hands?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Opposed? Hearing nobody opposed. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the ranking. Great discussion.
Frank,
yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you have a second, you need to make a second motion for part 2 of this.
Yes, I know that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Headed there right now. No, I just wanted to thank them for their rankings and the time spent on it, and looking forward to making sure this doesn't go by the wayside and we really discuss it at our next meeting. Moving on to E, part 2, motion to recommend IRL board to accept the management conference recommendation to fund the top proposals.
I'll make that motion, Northy.
Thank you. I have a motion, but Pat, do I have a second?
Paul has his hand up. Paul, you want to make the second? Hang on, you're still muted.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Now I can hear you.
Okay, I'm making a second.
Thank you, Paul.
He was waving his hand.
He was, I saw it. Wanted to give him a chance to be vocal.
Okay. Open it up for discussion. Kathleen, any flags there?
I see none.
Okay, at this time, I got a motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Opposed? Okay, hear none. Motion passes. Great job, everybody. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7, Executive Director's Report. Dr. D.
Thank you, Frank. I've got quite a few items I'm going to go through quickly, but there's a few that are really important to our immediate and long-term future. First and foremost, you know, we're in uncertain times, and we're able to have this Zoom public meeting largely because we're under an executive order, emergency order with the governor. There's a little bit of me that hopes that as we move into recovery, that there may be some modification of our ability under sunshine to be able to do these, you know, for workshops. But, you know, for at least the short term, you know, I'm expecting that we'll be seeing you all in August in this very same fashion, although I hope I'm wrong. But I've instructed staff, because of an abundance of financial caution, both at the federal and state level, to basically move everything forward as business as usual. And we are working, I didn't think it was possible, but we're all working harder now at home than we were when we were, you know, normally working, because now every Saturday and Sunday, for lack of anything else to do, becomes a work day. But I wanted you to know that I am not going to authorize Dan to execute any contracts for at least a month or so until I get a better handle on what our revenues look like. So we'll even with small grants. Anything that's going to be in the 2021 fiscal year, we'll negotiate right up to execution. And then I'm going to wait and see where we're at, because I do not want to execute contracts that we are not able to meet obligations to because revenue shortfalls that right now we can't predict. So we're being conservative. I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to be okay. But I spent 3 hours this morning at the state level with CareerSource Florida, and we have not yet seen the GDP impacts of this in the state. It's just starting. It's going to be pretty deep, and it's going to be pretty hard. With that said, there's a lot going on legislatively. Many of you, and thank you all so much, who helped during the Florida legislative session, talking to our House and Senate members and leadership. It was a pretty good year for water. The budget that the House and Senate crafted has not been sent to the governor. And then once it is sent to the governor is on a legislative timeline to execute his line item vetoes and to pass that budget into law. At present, there's a number of projects, both legislative budget request projects, internal agency budgets, and a line item for the Indian River Lagoon within, what originally was the governor's budget package for $25 million for the Indian River Lagoon, that my understanding would be administered through the water management districts. Until this budget gets to the governor's desk and until we see what he wants to do, I'm not sure of anything. So as it relates to state funding, we need to stay tuned. There is talk right now of a possible special session, but I don't have any confirmation of that. The federal level is equally as uncertain, but with some really good news. And so I want to quickly just give you the 3 parts of this. Number one, our appropriation for fiscal year, what we call fiscal year 21, which is really our 21-22 year. There's House and Senate letters with strong bipartisan support to increase the appropriation level from our current next year target of $660,000 to fully authorized $750,000. Both House and Senate are looking at the same number. We may be calling out for a little help when this starts to move, but right now I'm guardedly optimistic that that's in play and probably will hold. We get reauthorized at the federal level every 5 years. The WRDA bill, the WRDA Act, and also the WIFIA is another piece of that, which covers a lot of the Everglades restoration funding. That's on a 2-year cycle. Both are being handled by Congress as we speak. So I had a long conversation with Senator Rubio's staff. Looks like there is a lot of work being done to try to get WRDA moving through process quickly under normal process, and that would secure Everglades restoration funding, but that impacts our estuary on the southern end. And so we've offered any support that we can to House and Senate members to make that happen. The reauthorization bill for the National Estuary Program, and some of you, Pat, you may not be familiar. If you want to call me individually, I can give you more detail. There's 2 bills been filed already. House Bill 4044 and Senate Bill 3171. They both have the exact same amount of authorized appropriation dollars, which is remarkably good for us. They both have bipartisan support. There are co-sponsors from both parties on both bills. We're trying to get a 3rd Republican Senate co-sponsor on the Senate bill. But if that passes, it would authorize an increase, a base increase from 26.5 million, which is where we've been in authorization for the last 5 years, to $50 million, and an increase, and this is going to get tricky. In the House, there is language for an increase in the competitive grants program that was created in 2016. In the Senate bill, there is no mention of the competitive grants program. So they're going to have to reconcile that in conference. But the good news is bills are there. I have spent the bulk of the last 2 weeks on these appropriation issues at the federal level. And we'll keep everybody posted as things move forward. The third item at the federal level is that we were asked by a number of sources a couple of weeks ago about what the capacity of the National Estuary Program would be if Congress has a fourth stimulus package, and that stimulus package would include infrastructure improvements. There is some momentum. There's a little different focus in the House and Senate, but there is a very deep discussion going on about a need for an infrastructure stimulus, what should be in that stimulus. And I have begun briefings on key House and Senate members. The Association of National Estuary Programs submitted a letter to House and Senate minority and majority leadership that the NEPs stand ready, willing, and able. Should they move forward, water infrastructure funding could be run through the NEP program. We suggested 10 million each for each of the 28 national estuary programs, and an additional 100 million in competitive grants, just as an example. So we're not telling them how much, we're just trying to give them an idea of opportunity and need. In addition to that, we were asked to submit ideas for projects. I submitted all 700 and whatever number of projects on our list. That came back to me and they said, you need to narrow this down to just a few examples. So I just want you to know what I submitted and why. So I submitted 4 projects as examples of high delivery projects that I could quantify kind of the investment in immediate jobs in planning, development, and engineering, and long-term delivery of jobs, including support for both restoration of the lagoon and tourism. So I led in my examples for all of us with the 4 regional restoration centers in the CCNP. Marine Discovery Center up in New Smyrna Beach, Brevard Zoo and the Aquarium Project in Brevard, Harbor Branch Oceanographic, Florida Oceanographic Society, because they have seawater systems, they've got projects already underway. This would be for bricks and mortar, kind of hard asset construction. With that said, I think it's a long shot. I don't know if we're going to see any of that money. I don't know whether it's going to wind up in water or not, but you can imagine every state, every NGO, every special interest group is chasing stimulus. So we will keep you kind of abreast on that as it matures and if it matures. But we are formally now, on the record with House and Senate leadership that we stand ready to help them in the recovery phase of COVID-2. Mid-year progress report. Dan has worked for weeks to put this very complicated report together. It is being submitted tomorrow. If you want copies, we're very happy to supply it. It basically is everything we did last year in an EPA format. Discussions at the EPA have been rolling around now for the last year about, how should we be looking at nutrient reduction across the spectrum of things national estuary programs do. I submitted a draft white paper to EPA. That's in deep discussion. We've got 3 reports, really more, that are underway right now. Kathy's working on a multi-year communication plan. I'm working on a financing strategy for the CCMP. We've got a habitat restoration plan moving forward, the voter's guide moving forward, a monitoring plan moving forward, and I'm working with the STEM AC to do a Science 2030, which is a big picture view of, what don't we know and what are the big questions for science over the next 10 years. Kayleen is, in the weeds right now with the BMAPs, the TMDLs, and the Mosquito Lagoon Reasonable Assurance Plan to make sure that our project list and those projects aren't like double hitting on nutrient reductions or dollars. So she's doing that QA/QC. The onelagoon.org website is now, it has been up in a draft form. On May 30th, the old website comes down. Anybody who goes to the old website will be immediately directed to the onelagoon.org. But thanks to Kayleen and a lot of work, including some contract support, that One Lagoon is now ADA accessible. And lastly, Mobile Bay National Estuary Program is going through its 5-year National Estuary Program review. Kathy and I are serving on that evaluation team as they audit. We really wanted site visits because Mobile Bay, of the 28 NEPs, they're the gold standard for how you engage underrepresented and economically challenged communities. And we wanted to see that work on the ground. Last week, the EPA decided they were going to cancel all program evaluation field trips for the remainder of this year. And I agreed with their executive director of Mobile Bay. We're just going to do it on our own. So as soon as we can travel again and things settle down, I may send Kayleen and Kathy rather than me, but we're going to get together with Mobile Bay and see some of their really exemplary, projects, in that Bay watershed for underrepresented communities. So with that, Mr. Chair, unless there's questions, you can see the last, quarter, we've been really busy. This is just a fraction about what we're working on, but really appreciate all your support, appreciate your willingness to serve as volunteers, and we can't do this without you, so thank you. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Dwayne, thank you very much for how hard you work for us, and we greatly appreciate it. Any comments or questions directed to Dwayne? Okay, hearing none, move on to, Kayleen, did I miss any?
No, sorry, I
Okay,
was
thank you.
muted myself. I
That's okay.
apologize.
Go on to agenda item 8, final comments. Any final comments from anybody? Okay, thank you. First, I want to thank everybody, thank the staff, Kayleen, everybody there for doing this. And hopefully August, we're not Zooming, we're together again and working on this. And so thank everybody and appreciate it, and please stay well. Bye-bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, everybody.
Be safe, everybody. Hey, and if any of you hear of any of our communities or friends who may be suffering with COVID or just suffering where we can be of assistance, don't hesitate to give us a call. If we need to kind of rally the troops and help some of our partners along the lagoon. So let us know if you hear of anything.
Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.